I came home last Tuesday, expecting the usual quiet hum of our little house. Lauren, my wife of 6 years, was in the bedroom, tossing clothes into a suitcase like she was late for something big. "Grandpa's sick again," she said, barely looking up. "I'm heading out tonight." She'd been making these trips to her hometown lately, always about her grandfather's weak heart. I nodded, offered to drive her to the station, but she waved me off. "I've got it, Ryan." Fair enough. I'm not the hovering type. But something fell off. She zipped the suitcase shut and darted to the bathroom, leaving it unattended. I don't snoop, never have, but curiosity got me. I'm a botanist, right? I notice patterns, details others miss. So I nudged the lid open, expecting pajamas, maybe a book for the hospital wait. Instead, I found a silky red dress, heels, and a velvet box with some gaudy trinket inside. Stuff you'd wear to a party, not a bedside vigil. My stomach twisted. Why pack that for a sick old man? I closed it quick when I heard the bathroom door creak. "You okay?" she called, voice too bright. "Yeah," I lied, forcing a smile as she grabbed the suitcase and bolted out the door. The train's rumble faded into the night, and I stood there, staring at the spot where she'd been. Maybe I was overthinking it. Plants don't lie, people do. But that dress, those heels, they weren't for a hospital. Therefore, I had to wonder, was her grandfather even sick? Or was this something else entirely? I didn't sleep that night, turning it over in my head, knowing I couldn't just let it sit. I tried to shrug it off the next morning. Lauren's quirky, always has been. Maybe she packed that stuff to cheer her grandfather up, some weird sentimental thing. But the more I thought about it, the less it added up. I've spent years studying plants, how they adapt, hide toxins, reveal truths under a microscope. People aren't so different. So I poured my coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and dialed her. "How's Grandpa?" I asked, keeping it light. "Oh, hanging in there," she said, but her voice had that jittery edge, like when she's dodging a question. "He's weak, needs me close." I asked which hospital, just casual, but she paused. St. Mary's. "Gotta go, nurse is here." Click. She hung up fast. Too fast. I frowned, tapped my mug. St. Mary's was in her hometown, sure, but something nagged at me. Therefore, I grabbed my laptop and called them myself. "St. Mary's, how can I assist?" The receptionist chirped. "Hi, I'm checking on a patient. Henry Carver. Admitted recently." I held my breath. A few clicks later, she said, "No record of a Henry Carver here. Maybe another facility." My chest tightened. No record. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the wall. Lauren lied. But why? I paced the living room, replaying her words. Sick again. Needs me close. If he wasn't at St. Mary's, where was she going? That red dress flashed in my mind, taunting me. I could have called her back, demanded answers, but she'd just spin another story. I needed proof. Therefore, I decided to dig deeper. Her next trip was in 2 days. She'd already mentioned it. I'd be ready. I grabbed my notebook, the one I use for plant sketches, and started jotting down every odd detail she'd let slip lately. By midnight, I had a list and a plan. I've always been a details guy. It's why I love botany. You look at a leaf, think it's just green, but under the right light, you see veins, scars, secrets. Lauren's trips were like that. Simple on the surface, but jagged underneath. She'd been heading to her hometown every couple weeks for months, always with that grandpa's sick line. I bought it first. He's old, pushing 90, lives alone since her grandma passed. But after that suitcase and the hospital call, I couldn't unsee the cracks. I leaned back in my chair, flipping through my notebook. Last month, she'd come home with a faint pine scent on her coat, not hospital antiseptic. I'd chalked it up to the train station's trees, but now, doubt crept in. Then there was the time she'd mumbled about fixing things in her sleep, right after a trip. Context mattered. I needed more. So I scrolled her social media. Nothing flashy, just vague updates. Family time. Long day. But one photo stopped me cold. Her grandfather, Henry, grinning outside a diner, time-stamped 2 weeks ago. He didn't look sick, ruddy cheeks, steady stance. I zoomed in. Behind him, a guy in a leather jacket, half-turned, chatting with someone off-frame. Familiar, but I couldn't place him. My pulse quickened. If Henry wasn't bedridden, why was she rushing off to care for him? I almost called her right then, but my phone buzzed first. Lauren. Hey, babe, she said, all sugar. Grandpa's stable. Back tomorrow. Stable? At a hospital that didn't have him? I played along. Good to hear. Need anything? She laughed too loud. Nope, all set. Click. That laugh stuck with me, hollow and forced. Therefore, I made a call of my own to an old buddy in her hometown. Mike, I said, you still near Oakwood? I need a favor. He agreed to poke around. By morning, I'd have answers or more questions. Mike texted me at dawn. Henry's fine. Saw him at the diner yesterday, chatting up a storm. I read it twice, coffee going cold in my hand. Lauren's grandfather wasn't sick. He was sipping coffee and cracking jokes. So why was she packing fancy dresses and lying to my face? I stared at the text, then at that photo from her social media. The guy in a leather jacket lingered in my mind, blurry but tugging at some memory. Context was shifting fast, and I didn't like where it was headed. I was pruning my ferns when Lauren got home, suitcase thumping behind her. Hey, she said, dropping it by the door. Miss me? Her smile was wide, but her eyes darted, like a plant wilting under too much sun. Always, I said, clipping a leaf. How's Grandpa? She sighed, theatrical. Oh, weak but fighting. I nodded, watching her unpack, right there in the living room, like she wanted me to see. T-shirts, jeans, nothing fancy this time. But I'd seen the red dress before she left. Where was it now? St. Mary's treating him okay? I asked, casual as I could manage. She froze, just for a second, then laughed. Yeah, they're great. What? I shrugged. Just checking. She didn't push it, but her fingers tightened on the suitcase strap. Conflict was brewing. I could feel it. Therefore, I let it drop, but my mind raced. Mike's words clashed with hers. Someone was lying, and it wasn't him. Later, she fell asleep on the couch, phone buzzing beside her. I shouldn't have looked. Botanists aren't spies, but I did. A text from T. Missed you today. Tell him soon. My throat went dry. Tell me what? I set the phone down, heart pounding, and slipped outside to clear my head. The backyard was dark, my plants swaying in the breeze. I needed to know who T was and why she was hiding him. Her next trip was tomorrow. I'd be there. I barely slept, replaying that text in my head. Tell him soon. Tell me what? Lauren was up early, humming as she packed again. Same story. Grandpa needs me. I watched her stuff the suitcase with sweaters. No sign of that red dress this time. But I wasn't buying it. Plants don't change their roots overnight, and neither do people. She kissed my cheek, promised a call, and rolled out the door. I waited 10 minutes, then grabbed my keys. Her hometown's 2 hours by car. Oakwood, a sleepy spot with more trees than people. I told her I had a botany conference, an easy cover. She'd bought it, or so I thought. Driving gave me time to think. Henry wasn't sick. Mike confirmed it. That diner photo showed him hale and hearty. So why the trips? Who is T? I gripped the wheel tighter, weaving through back roads. Context was crumbling, and conflict was all I had left. I hit Oakwood by noon, parked near the diner Mike mentioned. Lauren's train would have arrived an hour ago. I scanned the street. No sign of her. But then there she was, slipping out of a cab, not a hospital in sight. She ducked into the diner, head low. I followed, keeping my distance, hoodie up like some amateur detective. Inside, she slid into a booth, opposite that leather jacket guy from the photo. My gut sank. He leaned close, whispering, and she laughed, soft, real, not the fake trill she'd given me. I snapped a picture through the window, hands shaking. Up close, I knew him, Tim, her old high school buddy. They'd lost touch, she'd said. Clearly not. I almost stormed in, demanded answers, but stopped myself. I needed more. Why here, why now? Therefore, I lingered, watching. A waitress brought coffee, and Tim slid something across the table, a small box like the one from her suitcase. She opened it, smiled, and tucked it away. My chest burned. Whatever this was, it wasn't about a sick grandfather. I had to find out what they were hiding and why. I crouched outside that diner window, breath fogging the glass, watching Lauren and Tim like some botanist studying a rare specimen. They weren't rushed. No hospital vibes here. Tim's hand brushed hers as he passed that box, and she tucked it into her purse with a grin I hadn't seen in months. My phone buzzed. Mike. You in Oakwood? He texted. Yeah. I replied. Diner. She's with someone. He shot back. Meet me at the park in 10. I slipped away, heart hammering, and found Mike on a bench, tossing crumbs to pigeons. He's an old college buddy. Knows Oakwood like I know plant cells. Henry's not sick, he said, cutting straight to it. Saw him this morning, buying smokes. I nodded, showing him the photo of Lauren and Tim. His eyes narrowed. That's Tim Grayson. Grew up with her. Bad news. Context clicked into place. Tim wasn't some random guy. But why the secrecy? Mike leaned closer. Heard them whispering once, outside the hardware store. Something about keeping it in the family. Sounded weird. My stomach lurched. Keeping one in the family? Lauren's grandfather flashed in my mind, his ruddy face in that photo, not a dying man. Thanks, I muttered, standing. I needed more than rumors. Therefore, I headed back to the diner, but they were gone, vanished like pollen in the wind. I circled the block, spotting her suitcase by a bench. She must have stepped away. I unzipped it quick, same red dress, folded neat. No time to think, footsteps. I ducked behind a tree as she returned with Tim, laughing. They grabbed the case and headed down a side street. I followed, keeping low, my mind racing. If Henry wasn't sick and Tim was this cozy, what were they hiding? I was about to find out whether I liked it or not. Trailing Lauren and Tim felt wrong, like I was the weed choking their roots, but I couldn't stop. They turned into a quiet street, past clapboard houses and overgrown yards, suitcase wheels clacking. I hung back, blending with the oaks. They stopped at a corner store, Tim popping inside while Lauren waited, scrolling her phone. I edged closer, catching her murmur, "He'll understand soon." Understand what? Tim came out with a soda, and they kept moving toward a house I recognized from old photos. Henry's place. The porch sagged, but the lights were on. I crouched behind a hedge as they knocked. The door swung open, and there he was, Henry Carver, Lauren's grandfather, hale as an oak in spring. No wheelchair, no oxygen tank. He hugged them both, voice booming about time. My jaw tightened. Sick, huh? I needed more. I slipped into the store Tim had left, nodding at the clerk, a grizzled guy with a lazy eye. Henry Carver still around? I asked casual. He snorted. Oh, he's around. Used to run this town, pairing folks up like some matchmaker. Strange old coot. Pairing folks up? My mind snagged on that. Still at it? I pressed. He shrugged. Dunno. Keeps to himself now. But those two, he nodded toward the house, always in and out. Conflict hit hard. Henry wasn't just healthy, he was meddling. But why lie to me? I thanked the clerk and stepped outside, dusk settling over Oakwood. Lauren's voice echoed in my head. Grandpa needs me. No, he didn't. He was pulling strings, and she was playing along. Therefore, I crept closer to the house, peering through a window. Henry sat with them, laughing, a stack of papers on the table. One word caught my eye, asterisk legacy star. My blood ran cold. Whatever this was, it wasn't a caregiving trip. It was something bigger, and I was in the dark. I pressed against Henry's house, the window frame digging into my shoulder, straining to hear. Lauren's voice floated out, soft but clear. He's been good to me, Tim. I owe him this. Tim chuckled. Yeah, well, Henry picked me for a reason. Picked him? My breath hitched. I shifted, catching a glimpse. Henry handing Lauren an old journal, leather-bound and worn. Keep it safe, he said, voice low. It's all in there. I pulled back, mind spinning. Plants teach you patience. Watch, wait, let the pattern emerge. But this was chaos. I needed that journal. I circled to the back, spotting an open cellar door. Dumb luck. I slipped inside, the musty air thick with mildew. Shelves lined the walls. Jars, tools, junk. Then I saw it, a box labeled Lauren. Inside, photos of her and Tim, kid shots morphing into recent ones. Too close, too often. My hand shook as I stuffed one in my pocket. Footsteps overhead. I froze, then bolted out, heart pounding. Back home by midnight, I stared at that photo. Tim's arm around her, Henry grinning behind them. Context crashed into conflict. She'd lied about more than a sick grandfather. I confronted her the next morning, voice steady. What's with Tim? She blinked, caught off guard. Just a friend, Ryan. Grandpa likes him around. I pushed. Henry's not sick. I saw him. Her face crumpled, then hardened. Okay, fine. Grandpa set me up with Tim years ago, before you. He thought we'd stick, but it's done. Done? Tim barged in, perfect timing, smirking. It's not done, babe. Henry's got plans. My fist clenched. Plans? Therefore, I demanded the truth. Right there, no more games. Lauren sighed, tossing the journal on the table. Read it yourself. I grabbed it, knowing whatever was inside would change everything. I flipped open Henry's journal, the leather creaking under my fingers, Lauren and Tim watching like I was defusing a bomb. Pages yellowed with age spilled out, dates, names, notes in his spidery scrawl. August 2005, Lauren and Tim, perfect match. Keep the line strong. June 2010, she's drifting. Bring her back. Then, 2 years ago, right after our wedding, new guy's trouble. Test him. Test me? My throat burned. This wasn't about money. It was control, some twisted legacy. I looked up, voice shaking. He's been puppeteering you. Lauren fidgeted. Grandpa wanted us, me and Tim, to stay close. Said it was his dream. Tim leaned back, smug. Been meeting her for years, man. Every trip. Henry's orders. Years. The word hit like a brick. I scanned more entries. Dates matching her sick grandpa excuses. Late-night diners, weekend getaways. All under my nose. How long? I snapped. Lauren flinched. Since before you. But stopped. Mostly when we got serious. Mostly? Tim laughed. Stopped till Henry pushed again. Last year, he said you weren't cutting it. My vision blurred. Not cutting it? I'd built a life with her, trusted her, while Henry played God and Tim played along. I slammed the journal shut. You let him run us? She teared up. I didn't want to hurt you, Ryan. I tried to pull away. Tried? Conflict roared. Her words clashed with the evidence. Therefore, I grabbed the photo from my pocket, tossing it at her. This you pulling away? She stared, silent. Tim shrugged. Henry's old school. Wanted us locked in forever. Forever. The journal's last page flashed in my mind. Add the new guy, or cut him loose. Add me? My skin crawled. They debated me like I was fertilizer for their soil. I stormed out, journal in hand, plotting my next move. I drove home alone, Henry's journal on the passenger seat, mocking me. Add the new guy, or cut him loose. Add me to what? Their little duo? I gripped the wheel, knuckles white. Lauren's tears, Tim's smirk, they played me, but Henry was the root. Not for cash, some sick need to control her life, their lives, my life. I pulled into our driveway, the house dark, and sat there, letting it sink in. Botany's my world. Plants don't betray you. You study their cycles, their poisons, their strengths. People? They twist everything. I flipped through the journal again, landing on a line. Tim's loyal. New guy's weak. Weak? I trusted her, loved her. Henry called that weak? Rage simmered, but I tamped it down. Revenge wasn't shouting or fists. It was strategy, like pruning a diseased branch. I wanted my greenhouse, the air thick with earth and chlorophyll. My plants stood silent. Foxglove, oleander, hemlock. Beautiful, deadly if you misuse them. An idea sparked. Nothing fatal. Botanists aren't monsters, but something subtle. A mix to cloud their minds, expose their lies. I grabbed my mortar, grinding leaves, testing ratios. Could I pull it off? Doubt gnawed at me. I wasn't this guy, was I? Lauren's key rattled the front door. Ryan, she called, voice shaky. I stepped out, journal in hand. What's this add me garbage? She froze. Grandpa thought, if you joined us, it'd work. Join them? My laugh was bitter. You're insane. Tim's voice cut in. He'd followed her. Henry's vision, man. You're in or out. Out, I thought. Therefore, I nodded, faking calm. Fine. Let's talk it out tomorrow, my place. They agreed, wary but smug. I turned back to my plants, the mix taking shape. They'd see my strength soon enough. I spent the night in my greenhouse, the air thick with the scent of crushed leaves and damp soil. Lauren and Tim thought they'd won. Thought I'd bend to Henry's warped vision. But plants don't bow. They adapt. I'd settled on a mix, dried foxglove and a touch of valerian. Not enough to harm, just enough to fog their heads, loosen their tongues. I ground it fine, testing it on a scrap of bread. bitter but maskable with tea. Could I really do this? My hands paused. I wasn't a villain, was I? Morning hit, and I shook it off. Lauren texted, "We'll be over at 6. Talk it out." I replied, "Sure. Bring Tim." My voice was steady, but inside I churned. Context mattered. Henry's journal had shown me their game. They toyed with me for years. Conflict demanded I act. I brewed the tea, stirring in the powder, and set the table. 3 cups, a plate of cookies. Innocent, right? My ferns watched in silence, like they knew. The doorbell rang. Lauren stepped in, hesitant, Tim swaggering behind. "Nice setup," he said, eyeing the greenhouse through the glass door. "You're a plant geek, huh?" I smiled thinly. "Something like that." We sat, and I poured the tea. To clearing the air, I toasted. They sipped, Lauren slow, Tim gulping. I waited, sipping plain water, watching their eyes. 5 minutes in, Tim slouched, rubbing his temples. "Weird day," he mumbled. Lauren blinked hard, frowning. "What's in this?" "Just tea." I lied, heart pounding. Therefore, I leaned in, voice calm. "So, Henry's vision, what's my role?" Their guards were down, and I needed them to spill. Tim grinned, sloppy. "You're the backup man. If I flake, you step up." Lauren nodded, dazed. Grandpa said, "Keep you close." Close? My jaw tightened. The mix worked. They were unraveling, and I was just getting started. Tim's words hung in the air. "Backup?" Lauren's head bobbed like she was fighting sleep, her cup trembling. "Keep you close," she echoed, then giggled, a sound that cut me deep. The tea was working. Foxglove muddling their focus, valerian softening their edges. I planned this, but seeing it play out? Unreal. Close for what? I pressed, keeping my tone even. Tim squinted, like he was piecing me together. "Henry's big on loyalty. Said you'd fit." Fit? I pictured that journal. Asterisk, add the new guy star. My stomach twisted. Lauren reached for me, clumsy. "Ryan, I didn't mean it like that. I love." She stopped, eyes wide like she'd caught herself. "Love? After years of lies?" I forced a smile. "Sure. More tea." They nodded, too foggy to argue. I poured again, heavier this time, watching their faces slacken. Context shifted. They weren't just pawns. They'd chosen this. Then Lauren softened, voice small. "I'm sorry, okay?" Grandpa pushed, but I should have stopped. Her apology hit me sideways. Sincere, maybe, but too late. Tim snorted. "She's soft on you, man." Henry wasn't. Conflict flared. I wanted to believe her, but the journal, Tim's smirk, said otherwise. Therefore, I pivoted. "Let's take a walk." Fresh air. I led them to the greenhouse, their steps unsteady, my pulse racing. Inside, the humidity wrapped us tight. Plants loomed, my domain. Tim stumbled into a pot, laughing. "What's this, a jungle?" Lauren swayed, clutching my arm. "Ryan, I messed up." I pulled away, cold. "Yeah, you did." I'd invited neighbors over, casual, drinks at 7, knowing this would peak then. Voices drifted from the yard. Perfect timing. I opened the vents, letting the tea's effects mix with the thick air. They'd talk. Oh, they'd talk, and everyone would hear. My revenge wasn't loud. It was a slow bloom, unstoppable. The greenhouse felt alive, vines curling like they sensed the tension. Lauren slumped against a bench, mumbling apologies, while Tim paced, dazed, kicking pots. "Stuffy in here," he slurred, wiping sweat. The tea had them, mine's soft, filters gone. I timed it right. Neighbors were trickling into the yard, chatting over beers. I'd pitched it as a plant tour, innocent, casual. But this was my soil now. I stepped outside, greeting folks, Tom from next door, Sarah from the block. "Lauren and Tim are inside," I said loud enough. "Rough day." Tom grinned. "Bring him out." I nodded, slipping back in. Lauren grabbed me, eyes glassy. "Don't hate me, Ryan." Tim laughed, bitter. "Hate Henry, man. He started it." Started what? I needed more. I cranked the heat, letting the air thicken. Plants thrive in chaos, and so would this. Then it hit me. I'd missed something. I dialed Mike, keeping it low. "Henry's meddling." "How far back?" Mike whistled. "Decades. Paired my cousin with some jerk once. Obsessed with perfect lines." Lines? Legacy. Context snapped into focus. Henry wasn't just controlling Lauren. He'd done this before. Conflict roared. Tim and Lauren weren't victims. They'd leaned into it. Therefore, I turned back, voice sharp. What's Henry's endgame? Tim flopped onto a stool, grinning loose. Us together. You're the spare tire. Lauren gasped. No, but voices cut her off. Neighbors closer now. Sarah poked her head in. Everything okay? Tim waved, sloppy. Oh, we're great. Tell him, babe, how Henry picked me. Lauren froze, then blurted, It's true. Years ago. The crowd hushed, heads turning. I stepped back, letting their words spill like sap. Sticky, undeniable. This wasn't my fight anymore. It was their unraveling. Sarah's jaw dropped as Lauren's confession hung in the greenhouse, the air heavy with heat and betrayal. Tim cackled, swaying. Henry's a genius, right? Kept us tight. Neighbors murmured. Tom, Sarah, half a dozen others, eyes darting between them and me. I planned this trap, but hearing it loud? Brutal. Lauren clutched a fern, voice cracking. I didn't want this, Ryan. He pushed you for years. I cut in calm but cold. Tim staggered forward, pointing. You're the odd man out, plant boy. Henry said. He tripped, crashing into my aloe, and the crowd gasped. Context was clear. Henry's journal, their lies, all blooming here. Conflict erupted as Lauren sobbed. I tried to stop. Tried? I'd seen the photos, the trips. The tea kept them loose, and they couldn't hide now. Sarah whispered, What's he talking about? Tom stepped closer. Ryan, you good? I nodded, letting it play. Ask them. Tim righted himself, grinning wild. Henry's last wish, keep the vision alive. You were the test. Lauren wailed, No, but the neighbors pressed in, questions flying. Vision. Pest. She crumbled, blurting. Grandpa wanted us locked in. Tim and me. Ryan was extra. Extra. The word stung, but I stood tall, roots deep, unshaken. Therefore, I opened the greenhouse doors wide. Hear that, folks? Years of it. Tim laughed, oblivious, while Lauren begged, Don't listen. Too late. Phones were out, whispers spreading. My revenge wasn't fists or shouts. It was this, their masks off, their legacy rotting in public. Tom clapped my shoulder. You didn't deserve that. I shrugged. Plants don't lie. People do. The crowd pulled them out, demanding answers, and I stayed back, watching the chaos I'd sown take root. The yard buzzed as Lauren and Tim stumbled out, neighbors circling like bees on a busted hive. Lauren's sobs mixed with Tim's sloppy laughs, their tea-fogged confessions spilling faster than they could catch. Henry's dream. Tim shouted, waving at no one. We're the core. Lauren yanked his arm. Stop. You're making it worse. Too late. Sarah was already texting, Tom shaking his head. My greenhouse loomed behind me, silent witness to their collapse. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. I'd wanted them exposed, but this? Almost too easy. Lauren caught my eye, pleading, Ryan, I'll fix it, please. Fix years of lies? I shook my head. You fixed enough. Tim flopped onto the grass, muttering, Henry knew you'd break. Break? Nah. I'd bent, sure, trusted too long, but I wasn't broken. I'd grown sharper, like a thorn you don't see till it stabs. Context settled. Henry's journal, their trips, the spare tire jab. Conflict resolved in the chaos they'd made. Neighbors drifted over, voices low. You okay, Ryan? Sarah asked. I nodded. Better now. Tom smirked. They're a mess. You're solid. Solid. Yeah, I was. I turned their game into mine, used my plants, my patience my way. No shouting, no threats, just truth laid bare. Lauren and Tim argued, voices fading as the crowd herded them off. I walked back inside, past my ferns, my foxglove, my quiet world. They'd underestimated me. Henry, too, from his puppet throne. I didn't need their circle. I cut myself free, stronger for it. The teacups sat on the table, empty now, like their excuses. I smiled small, real. Revenge wasn't loud. It was this, them shattered, me standing. And I'd never trust blind again. Thank you for tuning into this story. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know, what part of the world are you watching from right now? Let us know in the comments.